now that I've cut out one of my images, I'm just going to take my paper snips and round the corners that are already there, just cutting off all of that darker designer paper around the image. Once you have that done, you're going to take the blade of your paper snip and you're just going to drag it along the edges of your image here, just giving a slight distressed edge to this. If you don't want to use your paper snips, there are companies that have distressing tools, and you can always use those. So I just have my paper snips on hand, so I'm just going to use those to distress the edges. Once you have that distressed, you're going to set that aside for a moment, and you're going to need a piece of Java cardstock that measures 2 inches by 2 11/16. You want to take a Memory Keeper's corner chomper and you want to round all 4 corners using the 1/4 inch punch. Once you have that done, you're going to set aside your punch and you're going to just distress all 4 edges with your paper snips again. Just carefully rounding around the corners and keep just dragging the snips, the blade of your snips around just to distress the edges as you go. So now that I'm happy with my distressing, I'm just cleaning off my work area before I sponge my images. You can set aside your paper snips for a moment. You're going to take your image and you're going to center and stick that to your Java piece of cardstock, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides using your double-sided adhesive. Once you have that stuck down, you're going to take your blending tool again and add your ink around the edges of your image. And this just helps add that vintage look to your image. It already has a little bit of the sponging around the edges. I just wanted it a little heavier, so that's why I'm adding that. If you choose not to, that's okay. Once you're happy with how much sponging you have, you're going to set this aside and you're going to now take your tropical Travelogue Paradise Postage patterned paper found in the same pad but from Graphic 45, and you're just going to cut out 2 stamp images. I'm going to take a larger one and a shorter one, so I'm just going to cut in between my images so that I will be left with 2 stamps. This is a great way to add embellishments, is to use some that are already on your papers, so that because you already know that they coordinate. So once you have those snipped out, you're going to then add your ink to distress those or add a little bit of vintage touch to the sponge or to the stamps as well. So once you have your sponging of these done, you can set the ink and your blending tool aside, as you won't need them anymore. And we're just going to create one more embellishment. And to do so, you're going to need another pattern of paper found in the same Graphic 45 Tropical Travelogue collection, and this is the Garden Isles pattern. And you're just going to cut out a small flower as well as 2 leaf images using your paper snips. So just cut out along the edges, working your way all the way around that flower image. You're going to repeat that, cutting out, like I said, your leaves. So now that you've cut out your 2 leaf images as well as your flower, you're then going to need a foam mat as well as a stylus. And I have the Impressor stylus from EK Success, and it has 2 different ends, so I'm using the larger end. I'm going to flip over my images that I've cut out, and I'm just going to run my stylus in a circular motion, rounding my flower image and my leaf images so that they have a little bit of dimension to them. So just don't press too hard on your designer paper because you don't want it to tear. You just want it to start to curl a little bit. So just keep working your leaf image as well as your flower images. I like to start in the center of a flower and working my way outwards towards the leaves on the flower. So once you have your dimension added to your leaves and your flower, you're going to set your leaves aside for a moment, and we'll be assembling those shortly. And we want to add a little bit of gloss to our flowers, so I'm going to use Glossy Accents from Ranger, and you're just going to squeeze out a small amount, working it with the tip of the bottle here. So just pull the Glossy Accents over the entire surface of the flower. And once you have it covered, you are going to need to set this aside for a moment. It's better to let it air dry than to use a heat tool on it, because the heat tool will bubble the glossy accents slightly. So we just want it to add gloss, not other bubbles all over the surface of our flower. So once you've covered the whole flower, you want to let that dry. So as you can see here, I'll let you see a little bit easier that I've covered the whole surface of my rounded flower, and you just want to let that dry just for a few moments before we start assembling the rest of our card.